Hi there, late last year Barnes & Noble came out with the NOOK GlowLight 4. Now when this device first came out, I was not interested. I had the GlowLight 3 as well as the other GlowLight and I did not like them at all. Those devices were so terrible and I swore to myself I would never buy another NOOK. But lately I've been seeing some posts online talking about how the GlowLight 4 is such a massive improvement compared to the previous generation. So based on that information, I decided to buy the GlowLight 4 to actually see how big of an improvement they made compared to the GlowLight 3. And here's my upfront summary of my findings. The NOOK GlowLight 4 is a big improvement. The design is so much nicer and the software is so much quicker, but there are still some key deal breakers that cause me to not recommend this device to everyone. There's some key features missing, especially when it comes to nonfiction readers who like to take notes on their device. I'll be talking all about that in detail in this video. Now, I would recommend this device to anyone who's already in the Barnes & Noble ecosystem. If you have a NOOK and you've been using it for years and years and you have a ton of books to purchase through the NOOK library, then of course this is a big upgrade from the previous models. I think it's worth getting. But let me talk about all the details now in terms of the actual review. This video will be broken down into two main sections. The first part of the video will be talking about all things hardware related, the physical aspects of the device, and then lastly we'll be talking about software and how the device actually is used on a day-to-day basis. Let's jump into it. Now the NOOK GlowLight 4 is actually a direct competitor to the Kindle Paperwhite, and I would also say a competitor to the Libra 2 by Kobo. These all came out around the same time last year, so it was really interesting to see so many new e-readers come that are so different from each other. This device costs $149. It only comes in one configuration. You cannot change the storage capacity. That is stuck at 32 gigabytes, which is plenty of storage, more than enough for most people. And you also can't change the color or anything like that. $150 US for this device, no other options there. The first and most obvious thing we should talk about is the design of the new GlowLight 4. They did a massive update here. The old GlowLight 3 looked like it was from the 90s. I really thought that thing was pretty ugly, but this device looks very, very modern. The reason why I say that is the new GlowLight 4 has much smaller bezels compared to the GlowLight 3. This thing is actually almost a full inch smaller in bezel size from the top of the device, and about a quarter inch on the side as well. It's a huge reduction in bezel size right there, while still maintaining that same 6-inch display. It's really crazy to think about. The screen size is exactly the same, but the device is just so much smaller to hold. This is the best kind of design improvement you can make, but they also changed it up on the back of the device. It's much more flat on the back, giving it a much more modern look. I really, really like this. Also on the front, the edges are now rounded a little bit. It just looks a lot cleaner, much more modern, much more 2022 vibes. I really like the direction they're going over here. The device is made of all plastic. It's a very nice, soft, plastic material. I do say it does feel a little cheap in my opinion, but that's actually a selling point on the Barnes & Noble website. They promote this as a comfortable holding experience, something you can hold for hours on end. I have to agree with that. It is very comfortable to hold. The one thing about plastic though is it's very fingerprint prone, and the back of this device is always covered in fingerprints, especially for me. I have a beard. I put beard oil in my beard every day, so I always have oily fingers because of that, and my devices always get fingerprints. So if you have anything like that, whether it's lotion or beard oil, you definitely have fingerprints coming up all over your device. Now, technically speaking, you can buy a cover or a case for this device if you want. Barnes & Noble does sell one. I don't think you really need one though. The cool thing about a plastic device like this, it does feel a lot more durable than glass or metal. And I don't know what it is, but this device, I don't think I have to buy a case for it. I feel very comfortable throwing it in my backpack. Unlike my Kindle, where I do feel like I have to buy a case for it, that thing feels a bit more fragile. So having this cheaper material is a bit of a trade-off. You lose a bit of a premium quality of it, but you do gain more durability. The next thing I want to talk about are the buttons on the GlowLight 4. Now there are quite a few buttons all around the device, but the first ones I want to talk about are these page turn buttons. Just like the GlowLight 3, the GlowLight 4 also has two sets of page turn buttons. You have two buttons on the left side as well as two buttons on the right side. This is really to accommodate lefties and righties. I don't think I've ever seen this this before on any other e-reader. This is the only e-reader that has 2 sets of page turn buttons, which is kind of cool to think about, but at the same time, I don't know how I feel about having duplicate buttons. If you're a righty, you're never going to use the left buttons, and if you're a lefty, you're never going to use the right buttons. I think there's a way to accomplish this by adding a rotation sensor or something like that to avoid having extra buttons. But hey, they chose to do it. The price is not that bad either. So if you want to have 2 page turn buttons, this is a great device. You can go back and forth very, very easily. The buttons themselves are actually really nice too. They're right up against the edge of the bezel over here, not in the middle of the bezel like they were before. They changed the design. Now they're right up against the edge, and they kind of curve over the edge as well. Very, very sleek, very, very modern. Pressing the button actually feels really nice too. They have a nice click to them. They work very well, very reliable too. Nice soft press, and they always click no matter where you press them. I can't say the same about my Libra 2. So the buttons on this device are a big plus. They are plastic and they don't have that same premium quality as my Kindle Oasis, but for page turn buttons on an e-reader, I am very content with these on the GlowLight 4. The next button I want to talk about is the home button on the GlowLight 4. They actually use the NOOK logo as the home button, which is a very clever way of using the logo. I actually like that a lot. I'm not a big fan of the actual purpose of the home button. We'll talk more about that later in the video when it comes to software. The last button we have is actually the power button. They have a power button on the top of the device, and this is very interesting to me because the button itself works great. It clicks really well, but the only thing I don't like about it is just the middle of the device. I don't know why they centered the power button. I really wish it was off to the left or off to the right. For some reason, in the e-reader world, power buttons are always placed in the most weird locations. This device is no exception to that. The button works great. I just don't like the location of it. Next up, I want to talk about charging and power when it comes to the GlowLight 4. A new addition to the GlowLight over here is USB-C. This is a very, very welcome upgrade from the previous micro USB. They do include a USB-C cable in the box. They do not include a power brick that goes into the wall. Just like most devices these days, you'll have to supply that on your own. For me, I actually prefer to use my laptop charger for all my USB-C devices. It works great. You plug it in. I also really like the bright status indicator light right next to the charging port. It really helps me know when the device is actually charging. I actually also really enjoy the location of the charging port. It's not centered, it's actually off to the right side, which is a bit unique. I don't think I see many devices with an off-centered charging port. This actually looks really nice, and I really appreciate the subtle design upgrade there. Now on the Barnes & Noble product page for the GlowLight 4, they advertise a 1-month battery life for the GlowLight. Now I don't think anyone will actually be getting that because if you go to the fine print, there are quite a few conditions in order to achieve that 1 month of battery. You have to do things like turning off the wireless connection, making sure the brightness is at 10%, only use your GlowLight for 30 minutes a day, and only having 1 page refresh every minute. So that is a lot of conditions just to have that battery life last you a month. I do think this will last weeks at a time, which is still a great thing. Most devices don't last more than a day, so having an e-reader that lasts several weeks is always a plus, but the 1 month thing is a bit of a stretch. Next, I want to talk about the screen on the GlowLight 4. This has a 300 dpi resolution display, which is very, very standard in the industry right now. It looks very crispy, very, very nice to read on. No complaints there whatsoever. It's also a 6-inch display, which is a bit smaller now compared to the Kindle Paperwhite as well as the Libra 2. So you do have a smaller screen on this device, which may be something you prefer or not prefer, really a personal preference there. It also still has that warm light temperature control. I really love the branding that Barnes & Noble chooses to use. They call it night mode, very simple. You just turn it on in the settings over here and it quickly turns on the warm light temperature control. You can make the screen warmer or cooler. You also have a setting for auto shifting it based on the sunlight during the daytime, which is very nice, but there is no ambient light sensor, so you do have to manually adjust the brightness if you want to do that during the day. Now this device also does not have a flush display, very similar to the Libra 2 where the screen kind of goes down a little bit into the bezel. You can't run your finger across it like a flat glass display. I've been told by my previous YouTube commenters that this is actually a good thing that helps with text resolution because there's less layers between the screen and your eyes. I do see the point there, but I do think having a glass front is a bit more of a premium finish. I do like, though, the screen quality is very nice. It's also not as indented as the previous GlowLight 3. That thing actually was pretty deep into the bezel. This device has a screen that's still not flush, but it's not nearly as deep into the bezel as the previous generation. All right, let's move on to the software section of the GlowLight 4 over here. And I want to talk about first the first impression I have every single time I go to pick up my GlowLight 4. And that is the idea of actually having to unlock it every single time I want to read on this thing. The first thing you have to do when you pick up the GlowLight 4 is actually press the button and swipe to unlock. Now this may seem like a very small detail, but it gets very annoying because it's one extra thing you have to do every single time you pick up your GlowLight. I really wish there's a setting to disable the swipe to unlock thing, because I really want to just press the button and have the screen turn on to my book, just like my Kindle, just like my Kobo. You don't need this swipe to unlock feature. Now I do understand the Kindle does have a swipe to unlock if you have the special offers version of it, but if you don't have the special offers version of it, you can just quickly press the button and it turns right on. I don't have that option on the GlowLight 4 over here. It's really annoying. It's one of those things that really messes up your quality of life experience with an e-reader, and I don't know why they chose to keep it that way. One very small nitpick I have is regarding the text they use on the lock screen over here. They actually tell you to use the home button, the NOOK logo, as a way to wake up the device. I don't like this because it kind of defeats the purpose of having a power button. They really should be advertising, use the power button to unlock this device, because a lot of people out there who aren't very tech savvy would be really confused. Why is there a power button there when there's also a NOOK button that wakes up the device? Power should be associated with one button, and the home button should just be for going home. Very small detail there, but one thing I wanted to mention too. Now on the other side of the spectrum, one thing that they got really right on the software side over here are the speed improvements. Now I have to say this is probably because they included a better processor, hopefully, or something like that, but I'm sure they also included some software optimizations to make this thing way more snappy compared to the GlowLight 3. I remember on my GlowLight 3, opening a book would take several seconds at a time. It was a terrible experience. Now with the GlowLight 4, the software is much more snappy. It works very quickly. I can navigate around the device without any issues whatsoever. This is a very standard feature, not even a feature, this is something you kind of expect with any device in today's world. So I'm very happy Barnes & Noble finally caught up with the reliability of speed on the GlowLight series. Now I haven't experienced this myself, but I have heard several complaints through online reviews of this device actually freezing up. There's some known software issues with the GlowLight 4, so I don't think I can really make this a full pass because I haven't experienced it yet, but there are people out there who have had many issues with the software. So even though it's faster, I do think there's some work that has to be done to really perfect the software. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to an e-reader is simply ease of use. This is where I think the GlowLight 4 really starts to fall apart. The ease of use and the user interface of this software is just very clunky, and I don't like it at all. When you first get to the home screen, you'll see a bunch of tabs at the bottom of the screen with a bunch of icons. Now, when I first got my GlowLight, I didn't know what any of these icons actually meant. The only one I really understood was the bag, the store icon, as well as the magnifying glass at the end for searching. But the other icons, I had really no idea what they meant unless I actually went into them and figured them out. For the other three icons, I quickly discovered the first one is my library of all my current books that I have downloaded and purchased. The next one that I didn't know about was this middle icon, which is another book icon, but this one is meant to represent the book that you're currently reading. This is the book that you last opened and last were reading, so a quick shortcut to get back into that. And the third icon over here is a bit of a circle icon, and I didn't really know what this meant until I looked it up. And this is actually a Barnes & Noble feature called Readouts. It's basically a whole tab dedicated to advertisements and book samples. I don't like this part of it at all. I don't need to see a whole tab dedicated to samples of books I may or may not want to get. Now, to make things even more confusing though, when you press the home button, you would expect it to go back to maybe the first tab, the library tab, but it doesn't. It actually goes to this random screen with your home screen. It has a mix of recommendations, your personal books, all mixed together on one page. It's kind of like this hidden tab that's not really shown anywhere unless you press the home button. It's all very confusing. I don't like the way they lay out the software here at all. The settings menu is also a bit bare bones. There's not really much you can do in here. The settings themselves are very cleanly laid out. I really just wish there was more settings to choose from. I'm all about having simplification and having less settings and having, more simple options, but this is a bit too simple. When you go, for example, in the reader settings, there's only one thing in that entire menu, and that's the orientation of the page turn buttons. Why would you have a whole folder of settings with only one option inside of it? It really makes no sense. I think there's some key things missing over here. There's no setting for adding a passcode. There's no setting for adding the display cover, so the screensaver is your book cover. Nothing like that. There's some key things missing that I think they can learn from Kindle and Kobo. I think my biggest piece of feedback for this whole video, if Barnes & Noble is watching this and they're designing the GlowLight 5 in the future, this is the biggest thing that needs work right now. Optimize your software, add more features, make it look more modern and easy to use. The current implementation of the software really needs to be redone from the ground up. When you compare it against Kindle and Kobo, the Nook sticks out like a sore thumb. I just can't use this device because it just is very clunky to use. And that even does not include my next major complaint, which is all about note-taking. Now, as I mentioned before, I am a nonfiction reader. I really enjoy highlighting while I read my books. Now, unfortunately, you cannot do that very well, if at all, on this device. Normally, when you highlight text on a Kindle or a Kobo, all you have to do is press on a word and then drag it across the entire sentence or paragraph that you want to highlight. When you do that on a Nook, it doesn't do that at all. It actually takes the first word, pulls a dictionary up, and then drags it across each individual word, trying to look up the dictionary definition for each of those words that you're highlighting. It doesn't highlight anything. It just basically defaults to dictionary lookup on every single word that you're pointing at. To actually highlight something, you have to press and hold on one word. At the edge of each word, there's a bit of a cursor you have to drag on, then extend it across the entire sentence or paragraph. But the problem here is it actually doesn't snap to the whole word. You can end up highlighting half a word, which is even more frustrating. It's all very, very clunky. There's extra steps involved everywhere, and it's very hard to press. It's also very buggy. I'm pressing on one side of the screen and it's highlighting on the other side of the screen. It doesn't work very well. It's not reliable at all. Highlighting and note-taking is a feature I cannot live without when reading books, and you can't do that very well on a Nook. So that's a deal breaker for me right off the bat when it comes to buying a GlowLight 4 or recommending it to anyone. They also don't integrate very well with any other service I use like Readwise for taking all my highlights and compiling it in a database separately from my Nook. So all those reasons combined are a major deal breaker for me. If you take notes of any kind, you can't do that very well on this device. At the end of the day, the NOOK GlowLight 4 is a major upgrade from the GlowLight 3. If you're an existing Nook customer, I really do think it's worth the upgrade simply because of the speed improvements and the design improvements. But if you're not a Nook customer, if you are not in the Barnes & Noble ecosystem, do not get the GlowLight 4. I cannot recommend this device to you. It makes me really sad because I love Barnes & Noble. I love going there. I love going to their stores. I love browsing through their books, and I love supporting them, but I just can't get behind their e-reader products. I really hope in the future they're able to come out with something I can actually enjoy and maybe even switch to full time. We'll have to see what the future holds. If you're in the market for a new e-reader about the same price as the GlowLight 4, check out my review of the Kindle Paperwhite. That is the gold standard right now in the e-reader market. That just came out recently as well. Link for that video on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.